we receive about 8,000 bills a year in the legislature, and those are bills, they're all filed by individual legislators, and basically anything that a constituent wishes for a legislator to file, the legislator will file, sometimes with a caveat that he doesn't endorse the bill, but or she doesn't endorse the bill, but that's the starting point, is the filing of the bills, and bills are filed with more or less organizational support behind them. This bill clearly has some organizational support behind it, and so then it goes through the hearing process. I gather this bill's already had a hearing, and it's been reported out of committee over to the House side, so it's a House bill. And bills get reported either to the House or to the Senate. And then the two branches each have to take action on it. First, wherever it's reported, that's the branch that'll take action first, and then if that happens, then the other branch will consider it. And if both branches agree on a single version of the bill, they can kind of send things back and forth until they agree, or they can have a conference committee until they agree.
That's coming from outside?
Yeah, but the microphones are not really picking.
Okay, sorry, I just didn't know what.
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay.
Once there's an agreement on it, on draft language, then it gets voted on by both branches, and it goes to the governor's desk.
Now, does the Speaker of the House, what's the role there? Does he have to present the bill, or are there different ways of approaching it? Pardon my ignorance.
Well, the Speaker doesn't necessarily exactly present a bill. The Speaker may directly or indirectly consent to its being placed on the agenda for consideration. There's a lot of different mechanisms for keeping a bill on hold until people are ready to deal with it. It could stay in its original committee of jurisdiction. In this case, it's already been moved out of that committee, but it can sit in other committees, committee on third reading, which I believe is where this bill is, or steering and policy, or ways and means, or rules. Those are all committees that are where a bill may be referred and may remain for basically an indefinite period until people are ready to deal with it.
And how is the determination in terms of where it lands? How does it?
Some things are driven by rules, and other things are discretionary. Okay. But in this case, every bill is going to go through third reading, and so a third reading bill, that's a place that a lot of bills end up parked for a while.
What does that mean, third reading?
Third reading is the legitimate function of third reading, apart from being a holding tank, is to perform a legal reading of the bill, a technical reading. Is it changing the sections it means to change? Is it good English? Does it work from a grammar and legal standpoint?
I see. So I always have my wife check all of anything before I send it.
Right. Well, we try to get those things right at the time of filing, of course, but you have legal review at that point. You have the bill will be reviewed. There's a close relationship between the committee on third reading and the House counsel's office in the House, and there's a corresponding committee and a Senate counsel in the Senate.
Now it seems from what I've researched that a lot of bills go through the process several times, through several different years before they actually manage to become laws.
No, that's very true. I mean, because if you think about it, the institution has a relatively finite bandwidth to do major things. So there's only going to be a defined number of major things that are going to happen in any given year. That they may be more or less, and that may vary quite a bit, but that the institution has finite bandwidth. So when a bill is first proposed, if it's a very new idea and a lot of people don't understand it, well, it's not going to go too far. Probably may not get out of committee. Maybe after the committee hears it, they may just commit it to quote unquote further study, and it means it won't go anyplace that year. But then it may go a little further, and so there's typically it may take a few sessions for enough people to have had conversations about the bill, to become aware of it, to become aware of its merits, and ultimately be ready to do something with it.
Because I would imagine that there's a certain amount of momentum that needs to be built up around the bill before.
Yeah, yeah. At each session, it's hard to get people's attention on anything, and so to educate people enough to say, yeah, this is something we want to move forward. Each year, you may educate more people and get to a point where, okay, now we really do have a critical mass to get something done with.
And the sessions are typically.
We're elected every 2 years, and at the start of each year, people file bills. Or rather, excuse me, at the start of each session, so that would be an odd number year. January, people file legislation, and then it carries over into the following year. But then if it doesn't get done by the end of the following year, it's done for that session, and nothing happened.
Just a ballpark, how many of the thousands of bills that come up, how many actually go through to a vote? Do you have a sense of that?
Yeah, I've looked at those numbers. It's in the hundreds. It will typically be a few hundred bills will get done. Now, of those, the vast majority are trivial things that perhaps really shouldn't require legislation. We have this legislative process involved in creating sick leave banks for employees. That counts for 50 to 100 bills every session. Bridge namings. We have a lot of local bills that involve variations of state law to accommodate something that a municipality is trying to do. Their city council or their town meeting has voted that they would like to do X that is not permitted by state law, and we approve it. Again, do we need all those bills? Could we improve state law in some general ways? Maybe, maybe not. But there's a high volume of those very small and local bills. There's maybe, I'm going to say 50 to 100 policy bills that alter some aspect of state policy that's not merely local or individual. And of those, a handful will be things that you would read about in the newspaper.
And with the Healthy Workplace Bill, does that fall under the policy?
Yeah, that would fall under the policy category, and it would probably, it's a 4 or a 5 on the Richter scale. It's not a seismic change, but it's a significant change.
How does the process work in terms of the bill getting their sponsors? Is that right? Is that how it works, or?
Yeah, the sponsorship process is I think it's sometimes overemphasized because, in fact, people sponsor bills fairly casually. The sponsorship process is kind of like a rush. In the early part of the year, you have organizations will hold their sponsorship days and invite legislators to walk around and sign their names to bills. Environmental law sponsorship days, unions have sponsorship days. So people walk into those rooms and they get, a 30-second explanation of what the bill is and say, it sounds good to me, because they want to be nice, and they sign on to it. But does that mean they really understand it? Does that mean when push comes to shove, they really want it to happen? Very hard to tell. So for example, you had the bottle bill here, typically had well over 100 sponsorship, well over half of the legislators in both branches, never passed either branch. So it's not, organizations may be able to sort of strong arm people into signing on as sponsors, or just nicely persuade people as to sign as sponsors, but doesn't necessarily mean the bill will go where people want it to go.
It's not as significant.
It's not as significant as you'd like it to be, because people, and I view that as sort of appropriate. I mean, you say, well, it's enough to say this is a good idea. I think it merits consideration, but once you then hear all sides of it, is it something you want to move forward or not? That's a different question.
Right. So the Healthy Workplace Bill now is, if you could describe a little bit of where it is in the process. I know we talked about it a little bit, that it's now over on the House side. What does that mean in just plain English?
Well, so it means it's been reported out of the committee, which is good. So that's made the first real hurdle. And last I looked, it was in the third committee on third reading in the House, which just means it's gotten some floor attention already. But are people? It has not had a floor vote. That's my understanding. Is that your understanding as well?
Understanding as well. Also,
right. So it hasn't had a floor vote yet, and whether it'll get a vote or not, that remains to be seen.
Right. And I know that.
And by the way, one of the questions is, when does it get a floor vote? I mean, if it gets a floor vote on July 31st, they send it over to the Senate at on an hour before the close of the biennial session, that's the same as not giving it a floor vote.
Right.
It's a way of sort of saying, hey, we're good guys,
Mm-hmm.
but actually they weren't because they just did it at the very end of the process without us having an ability to take a look at it.
Right, or actually really have the time that you would need to.
Right. And the session ends on July 31st of the second year of an even-numbered year. And there will be no formal votes afterwards, so after that date. So anything that's significant, or I should say significant and controversial, needs to get done before that date.
So this coming July 31st?
Right.
So
That's right.
okay, so that's great information.
Yeah.
And this, I don't believe that I think this is the furthest so far that this bill has gotten in the process.
How many sessions has it been filed in?
3. I think this is the 3rd one,
Okay.
I believe. It was filed by someone else in a slightly different form the first time than Senator Story, who's I'm not exactly sure of the proper language, but she's the one that presented, or how would I say, what is it that she does when
She was the lead sponsor.
the lead sponsor? of
She
the bill?
filed it. She got a bunch of other sponsors, but she filed it. So
Right.
she's the lead sponsor.
And in this case, the bill also has the most number of people signed on to support it too. That it's had.
That's progress. Yep.
And last I saw was over 80 or something. So it's a good number. And I think I asked you before, but have you ever experienced, or do you have any personal experience with workplace bullying? Have you seen it, or has it been part of your life at all?
Schoolyard bullying was a big part of my life in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. 8th grade was probably the toughest year of my life. But workplace bullying, I've had my issues, but I haven't really experienced it that I would think of as bullying in the same way. I've been fortunate. Since 8th grade, it's been relatively good.
Well, that's good. I know a lot of those 8th grade bullies have grown up and are doing the same thing.
Well, there's truth to that. I know that one of my 8th grade bullies is in Walpole now. The people, early behavior does presage future behavior.
That's great. Do you? I'm sure you'd have to look into what is it that you would need to learn or hear about this bill to vote on it or to move it forward? What more information, or how does that process work?
I think there's when you start creating a new legal cause of action, you just have to kind of think about whether it really is well calculated to serve the end it's intended to serve. How will this work? Will this create a lot of cost and expense for everybody, and without actually changing life in the workplace? Or is it likely to really change life in the workplace? And I just need to hear some more about that from lawyers and advocates. I see this bill is not the one that I've had the benefit of testimony on. We, in the Judiciary Committee, which is the committee I chair, we have big hearings, and the same has happened on this, I'm sure. But I wasn't part of those hearings because it was before the Labor and Workforce Committee. So I just don't have the full benefit of hearing both sides of the argument as to how this will really work.
Sure. And I would imagine that, is that something that you wait until you see once it gets to a certain point of the process? I mean, where is it? Because as you said, there's so many thousands and thousands of bills. At what point in the process does it get on your radar screen?
I have a portfolio which I'm responsible for in the Judiciary Committee. So those are things that I'm going to be moving proactively, trying to sort. I have a job to sift through 800 pieces of legislation that have been, before my committee. And so we take that job seriously and try to put forward the ones that have merit and have some potential for gaining consensus. But typically, there's a lot of controversial issues in this building, so I don't tend to focus on them too far. I got to focus on the ones that I'm actually about ready to take action on. Right. So those would be the things that are either in my committee or have achieved it, come before the Senate for likely floor consideration. So this bill is over in the House. When it gets over here, we'll give it a close look.
I would assume that you fall on, as everyone normally would, that you think that workplace bullying overall is a bad thing, a bad idea. Do you have a stance on
I'm against it.
Yeah.
I'm against workplace bullying, of course.
Well,
Of course. No. I really am. No.
it
I
sounds
mean,
like a silly question.
no.
but-
I think I understand what you're reaching at, but I mean, of course, no. As I say, in my life, I have been on the receiving end of it, and it's a big deal.
Yeah, it is. Well, I certainly covered all the ground that I would like to cover. Is there anything that you can think of that you'd like to say or add to this that either about the process or the bill or whatever in general? Feel free. Your open time.
Sure. Well, no, I think it's an important issue, and I'm glad people are bringing it forward, and I hope we can get to a place where we can make a difference on it.
Terrific.